Billion-dollar company CEO forced me to sign prenup. Now his daughter's affair will cost her over $10 million. Be me, alone in my room at 4 a.m. Can't even get my thoughts straight right now. Staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The anger won't leave my head. Never imagined I'd be that guy. The one posting about his life falling apart on the internet. But here I am. Need to get this off my chest. My wife, Catherine, 43F, of over 20 years cheated on me, 45M, 20 fucking years of marriage, trusted her with literally everything. My time, my love, our kids, she threw it all away. For some guy closer to our kids' age than hers. Don't think the full anger has even hit me yet. More like this dull, numbing ache, taking its sweet time to really sink in. Can feel it slowly eating away at me. Should probably start from the beginning. Back before all this mess happened. Before the betrayal. Before the cheating. Before everything crumbled to pieces. Let me tell you how it all started. Way back before everything went wrong. Got married to Catherine in our early 20s. Met during college years. Pretty typical story, I guess. I didn't come from much growing up. Parents worked hard, but we weren't rich. Catherine, though, she came from serious money. Her family was in a whole different league. Her dad owned these big businesses. Mom spent her days throwing fancy charity dinners, like it was her actual job or something. Could tell right away her parents didn't like me. Never said it to my face, but you could see it in their eyes. The way her mom would interrogate me about my plans for the future, like I was at a job interview. Instead of dating their daughter, still I loved Catherine, and she loved me. Or at least that's what I believed back then. That's all that mattered to us, or what I thought mattered anyway. When we got engaged, her family dropped the prenup bomb. Still remember that day perfectly. Sitting in their massive living room. Her dad practically burning holes through me with his glare. Their fancy lawyer explaining all the terms. Basically spelled out that if we ever got divorced, she wouldn't owe me a single penny. I couldn't touch any of their precious family money. Not even a dime. At the time, I honestly didn't care. Wasn't marrying Catherine for money anyway. Told them exactly that. I was just some broke college kid. Wasn't bringing anything to the table financially. So why would I even argue? Signed it without giving it a second thought. Looking back now, though, that was the first time I let them treat me like I was less. Like I didn't matter as much as Catherine or their family name. But I brushed it all off. I loved her. She loved me. That was enough for me back then. Fast forward a couple years. We got married. Had our first kid, Madison. Life felt pretty good. I was working my ass off at my engineering job. Pulling in decent money. While Catherine stayed home with the baby. That was her choice. I was completely fine with it. Actually felt proud that I could provide enough. Let her do whatever she wanted. We talked about getting a nanny, maybe putting Madison in daycare, but Catherine said no. She wanted to be there for the kids. I supported her all the way. Over the next few years, we had 3 more kids. 2 boys, Nathan and Lucas. Another girl, Rachel. Won't lie, money got tight sometimes, but we always found a way to make it work. I just worked even harder. She took care of the kids and the house. We were a team, or at least that's what I thought we were. During all of this, her family's money kept flowing. They'd send her monthly allowances, pay for fancy vacations, cover designer clothes, private schools for all the kids. Their money meant Catherine never had to stress. That's just how things always were. Honestly, I didn't mind it. I was still contributing plenty to our household, paid for our house, covered all the groceries, handled every bill, took care of whatever we needed to keep going. Then about 10 years ago, everything changed. Her family's money started drying up. Don't know all the details. There were lawsuits, bad investments. Everything went south. The monthly allowances stopped coming. Her dad's businesses went under. Her mom lost all her precious charities, like watching a slow-motion train wreck, except it wasn't my problem. Around this time, Catherine started to change. She didn't get a job. I didn't ask her to. Just assumed we'd keep going like always. But she started getting bitter, complaining more and more about things we didn't have, always talking about how different life was. Before the money ran out, at the time I thought she was just struggling. With the transition, her whole life before me was nothing but privilege. Now she was living like everyone else. I thought we'd push through it. Had no idea she'd throw everything away. Here's the part that stings the most. After 20 years of me being the stable one, me being the provider, while she stayed home, the prenup is screwing her, not me. She has no alimony rights because of it. That was part of their precious deal. Back then, she and her family didn't think it would matter. But now that she's cheated, now that I'm leaving her, she's finally realizing what that prenup actually means. The only thing we own together is our house. It's paid off. But the upkeep, taxes, and HOA fees aren't cheap. Once the divorce is finalized and the house gets sold, she'll get her share of the proceeds. But after that, she's on her own. Has to figure out what to do next. I know that sounds harsh, but I'm done caring. She made her choices. I never wanted any of this. I married her because I loved her. Gave her 20 years of my life. helped her raise 4 amazing kids, worked my ass off so she wouldn't have to worry about money, and she repaid me by throwing it all away. For some guy who probably doesn't even know what it's like to have a mortgage, I don't feel guilty for leaving her without anything. I don't think I should. She didn't feel guilty when she cheated on me. Actions have consequences. Now she has to deal with them. I guess I should explain how I found out about the affair. Looking back now, it feels surreal. Keep asking myself how I missed the signs. Was I really that blind? Or did I just not want to see it? Still go over it in my head, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when she started drifting away, when our marriage quietly fell apart. While I was too busy to notice, it all started a few months ago. I'd been working later than usual. Work had been rough this year. Lots of layoffs. Constant pressure to perform. Was putting in extra hours, trying to keep everything afloat. Catherine seemed fine with it. Wasn't complaining about me working late, like she used to. Looking back, that should have been a red flag. Just thought she was used to it. After all these years, one night I came home, found her on her phone. She was laughing at something. Quickly put it down when I walked in. That's when I felt it. This weird gut feeling that something wasn't right. Ignored it at first, because honestly, what could I say? Hey, I didn't like the way you laughed at your phone? Sounded insane. But that gut feeling wouldn't go away. Over the next few weeks, she got more secretive with her phone, taking it everywhere, to the bathroom, to the kitchen, even out in the garden while watering plants. This wasn't like her at all. Catherine was never tech-obsessed. She'd even make fun of me for being glued to my laptop sometimes. Now suddenly her phone was her new best friend. I told myself I was imagining things. After 20 years of marriage, thought I knew her better than anyone. Kept brushing the feeling off, convincing myself it was stress or paranoia. But then there were the weird errands. She started going out more often than usual, always alone, always at odd times. I'd come home. Kids would say mom just left to grab groceries, or she was picking up a gift for someone. The tipping point came when I saw her, parked at a strip mall across town. I'd left work early that day, completely unplanned. One of my meetings got canceled, was driving through the area to grab lunch. When I spotted our car, figured she must have been shopping. But as I pulled into the lot, I saw her sitting in the car, with someone in the passenger seat. Couldn't see his face, but knew immediately it wasn't one of our kids. I froze. Remember gripping the steering wheel so hard. My knuckles turned white. Didn't want to confront her right then and there. Don't even know why. Maybe I was scared of what I'd find out. Maybe I was trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Just sat there for a minute, staring at the car, before I turned around and drove home. That night I couldn't look at her the same. Every word she said, every smile she gave me, felt fake, like I was seeing her through a completely different lens. It ate away at me, knew I had to find out the truth. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm also not sorry. Went through her phone. She'd left it charging in the kitchen. While she was taking a shower, finally had my chance. The password hadn't changed. Got in right away. The messages were all there. Dozens of texts to someone named Eric. Read through everything. My stomach dropped with each word. They'd been seeing each other for months. The texts weren't even careful. They were flirty, suggestive, downright disgusting at times. Stuff like, can't wait to see you again, or last night was amazing. There were pictures too. Nothing graphic, but enough to tell me exactly what was going on. Felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. Just stood there in the kitchen, her phone in my hand, shaking. My head was pounding. Put the phone back exactly where I found it. Walked outside because I couldn't breathe. Don't know how long I stood in the yard, just staring at nothing. Eventually went back inside. Catherine came out of the bathroom, hair still wet. Asked if I wanted to watch a movie later. She smiled at me. Smiled like nothing had happened. That's what I can't get over. How easily she could lie to me, look me in the eyes, and pretend everything was fine. That night I didn't say a word, slept on my side of the bed, or pretended to, while she snored softly next to me. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do. Part of me wanted to wake her up right then, confront her, scream at her, demand answers, but another part of me felt numb. Like if I stayed quiet long enough, maybe I could pretend I hadn't seen anything. The next day I called a lawyer. Didn't say a word to Catherine. Just left for work. Sat in my car for an hour. Then found a divorce attorney, who came highly recommended. Didn't want to play games. Wanted to know my options, and what I could do to get out of this marriage as cleanly as possible. My lawyer was great. She walked me through everything calmly. Told me I needed to act smart, not emotional. Said not to confront Catherine yet, and to start gathering evidence. The texts were a good start, but I needed more. So for the next week, I pretended everything was fine, acted normal, while quietly gathering proof, bank statements, her location history, screenshots of messages, Felt like a damn detective. In my own house, it was the worst week of my life. Finally had enough. My lawyer filed the paperwork. Catherine got served the next morning. Her face when she opened that envelope is something I'll never forget. Shock. Confusion. Maybe even a little fear. She looked up at me. All I said was, I know. Didn't yell, didn't explain. Just walked out of the room. I'll never forget that day. Because it was the last time. I felt like my life was still, somewhat in my control. Little did I know. Things were about to get even messier. I'll be honest about something. When I first found out about the affair, my biggest concern was keeping it. Between me and Catherine. Didn't want my kids dragged into it. They didn't deserve this mess. Didn't want to shatter their relationship with their mother. Figured the less they knew, the better. I thought I was protecting them. Of course, that's not how it went. The moment Catherine got served with divorce papers, she decided to flip the script. Instead of dealing with what she'd done, she ran straight to our kids, turned on the waterworks. I wasn't there to see it firsthand, but apparently she sat them all down in the living room. Told them I was giving up on the family. Rushing to divorce over one mistake, that's how she described it. Like forgetting to take out the trash or being late for dinner. Nathan, 18M, our youngest, was the first to come to me about it. He's always been the no-nonsense kid of the family. He knocked on my office door one evening, sat down, and flat out asked me, Dad, what's going on? I tried to keep it simple. Said your mom and I are having serious issues, and we're not going to stay together. He nodded, processed it for a second, then asked, did she cheat? The question hit me like a punch. Wasn't expecting him to put it together so fast. But Nathan's always been sharper than people give him credit for. I didn't lie. I said yes, she did. I saw the anger flash across his face, but he didn't say anything else. He just nodded again and left. That was the start of it. From there, the other kids started asking questions. Rachel, 20F, texted me first. She's quieter than her siblings, more reserved. Think she was trying to feel me out. She asked if it was true. I'd filed for divorce. When I said yes, she just replied, okay, no follow-up, no judgment. Rachel's always been the type to keep her thoughts to herself, but I could tell she was hurt. Lucas, 19M, was more upset about the situation as a whole. He called me a few days later, asked if there was any way we could work it out. For the family, I had to explain to him that trust is everything in a marriage, and once it's gone, you can't get it back. I told him I couldn't spend the rest of my life with someone who looked me in the eyes and lied to me. He seemed to understand, even if he didn't like it. Then there's Madison, 22F. I saved her for last, because honestly, her reaction has been the hardest for me to deal with. Madison has always been close to her mom, closer than she's ever been to me. That's not to say we didn't get along, but I was the strict parent, the one who made the rules and enforced them, while Catherine played the fun, easygoing mom, so I wasn't surprised when Madison took her side immediately. But it still hurt like hell. Madison showed up at my house one evening, practically demanding to talk to me. I let her in. She wasted no time tearing into me. Why are you doing this to Mom? That's the first thing she said. Not a question about what happened, not asking for my side of the story, just accusing me. I stayed calm, because at the end of the day, she's still my daughter, and I love her. I told her the truth, plain and simple. Her mom cheated. I said I couldn't forgive that, and I wasn't going to pretend like everything was fine. Madison shook her head, started crying, but she's sorry. She knows she messed up, and she wants to fix it. I couldn't hold back at that point. I told her, Madison, this isn't something you fix. This isn't a broken plate you can glue back together. Your mom made choices that destroyed this marriage. I'm not going to stay married to someone who doesn't respect me. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. You're just giving up. She said, you're destroying this family because you're too proud to forgive her. That's what broke me. I wanted to yell. I wanted to scream that I'd given 20 goddamn years to this marriage, and her mother was the one who destroyed it. I bit my tongue, though, because yelling wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I told her, Madison, I love you, but this is between your mother and me. You don't understand everything, and it's not your job to fix it. She left angry. For the next few weeks, every time I heard from her, it was more of the same, pleading, crying, begging me to give her mom another chance. I kept offering to pay for therapy for her, because I knew she was hurting, but she wouldn't take it. She just kept telling me there wouldn't be anything to cope with if I'd stopped the divorce. At this point, I had to limit contact with her for my own mental health. It killed me to do it, but I couldn't keep having the same argument with her every day. I told her I'd talk to her again once things calmed down, but until then I needed space. The other kids stayed neutral. For the most part, Nathan stopped talking to his mom entirely after he found out about the cheating. Rachel tried to stay out of it, but I could tell she was quietly supporting me. Lucas was torn, I think, but he kept his distance from both of us. Catherine thought. She saw all of this as leverage. She knew Madison's reaction would get to me, so she used her to try to manipulate me. Suddenly, Madison was sending me long texts about how much her mom regretted what she did, how she deserved a second chance, and how I was being unfair. I knew exactly where those words were coming from. It wasn't Madison. It was her mother. That was the moment I realized. Catherine wasn't just trying to save our marriage. She was trying to save herself. She knew the prenup screwed her over, and now she was weaponizing our kids to pressure me. That realization made me angrier than anything else. It was like she didn't care how much damage she was causing, as long as she got what she wanted. If you've been following my story, you already know things were bad, but what happened at Rachel's birthday took everything to another level. It's the kind of night I'll never forget. No matter how much I wish I could, Rachel turned 20 a couple of weeks ago. We'd planned a small family dinner at my house. Nothing fancy, just the kids, a cake, and some pizza. Something casual. Since Rachel's not the big party type, I knew it was going to be awkward, because it was the first time Catherine and I would be in the same room. Since I filed for divorce, I also hadn't spoken much to Madison since our last fight, but I figured everyone could suck it up. For one night, it was Rachel's birthday after all. A couple of days before, I texted Madison and Catherine to let them know my one ground rule. Don't bring up the divorce. I told them this was for Rachel, and I wasn't going to let our issues ruin her day. I thought I'd covered my bases. Madison never replied to my text, and Catherine didn't either. That should have been my first clue, that things were going to go sideways. The day of the dinner, everyone showed up. Catherine was the last to arrive, which was typical for her. She always had to make an entrance. She walked in with Madison right behind her, and immediately I felt the tension. Catherine smiled at me, like nothing had happened, and Madison didn't even look at me. I kept my mouth shut, because I wasn't about to start a fight. Dinner itself was tense. The kids were trying their best to keep the mood light, cracking jokes, talking about work or school, but you could feel it. It's hard to describe, but it was like there was this invisible weight sitting on all of us. Every time Catherine said something, it felt forced, like she was trying too hard to act normal. Madison was quiet, which isn't like her at all. She usually talks everyone's ear off. But that night she barely said 2 words. Then we got to the cake. Rachel seemed happy enough. I was trying my best to focus on her, to make her feel celebrated, even if things were awkward. But as soon as the candles were blown out and we started cutting the cake, Catherine decided that was the perfect moment to start her little speech. "Isn't it nice to have the family all together again?" she said, raising her glass, like we were at some perfect family dinner. In a movie, it's so important to put aside differences and come together for the people we love. I froze, could feel the blood rushing to my face, because I knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't about Rachel or her birthday. This was about the divorce. She was trying to guilt trip me in front of our kids, and the worst part is, she was doing it under the guise of being loving mother. The room went silent. I glanced at Rachel. She looked down at her plate, clearly uncomfortable. Nathan was the first to break the silence. "Are you serious right now?" he said, glaring at Catherine. "You couldn't just keep it to yourself for one night?" Catherine tried to play innocent. "What? I'm just saying it's good to be together. That's all." Nathan wasn't having it. "No, you're not. You're making everything about you." Like always. That's when Madison jumped in. She snapped at Nathan. "She's not making it about her. She's trying to fix things. She's the only one who's trying to keep this family together." At this point, my head was pounding. I wanted to stop it before it turned into a full-blown fight. So I said, "Enough. This isn't the time or place." But it was too late. Rachel, who had been quiet all night, suddenly slammed her fork down on the table. "Oh my God, just stop," she yelled. "Madison, you're only on Mom's side because you helped her cheat." The entire room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I turned to Rachel, stunned. "What did you just say?" I asked. Rachel looked angry. Angrier than I'd ever seen her. She turned toward Madison. "You knew, didn't you? You knew about Mom's affair. And you helped her hide it?" I looked at Madison, and I swear she went pale. She didn't say a word. She just sat there, looking guilty as hell. That's when I realized Rachel was telling the truth. My own daughter, my oldest child, had known about the affair. Not only that, she'd actively helped her mother cover it up. I can't even describe what I felt. In that moment, it wasn't just anger. It was betrayal on top of betrayal. It was like the knife in my back, got twisted all over again. I looked at Madison and asked, "Is that true? Did you know?" She didn't answer. She didn't deny it. She just sat there, looking down at her lap. Catherine tried to jump in and deflect. "Let's not do this right now," she said, her voice shaky. "This isn't the time." Nathan cut her off. "Are you kidding me? You did this, and now Madison helped you? You're unbelievable." The whole dinner turned into chaos. Rachel stormed out of the room. Nathan was yelling at Madison. Lucas was just sitting there, completely stunned. I didn't know what to do. I was too angry, too hurt, too overwhelmed to even process what was happening. I stood up, looked at Madison and said, "We're done talking for now. I can't even look at you." Then I walked out. I sat in my car for probably an hour that night, trying to process it all. My wife had betrayed me, but Madison, I never thought she'd be capable of something like this. I get that she's close to her mom, but covering up an affair, helping her lie to me, that's something I don't think I can ever forgive. When I went back inside, the house was quiet. Everyone had left. I sat in the dark for a while, feeling like everything I'd built was crumbling around me. That night I decided I couldn't keep trying to fix things with Madison. Not now. Not after this. I'd already lost my wife. And now I felt like I'd lost my daughter too. After Rachel's birthday dinner blew up, I spent the next few days in a fog, barely slept, would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that would go cold, just staring at nothing. The silence in my house, which used to feel comforting after a long day, now felt heavy and suffocating. It's weird how everything can look the same, but nothing feels the same anymore. The truth is, what Rachel revealed about Madison broke me in a way I didn't think was possible. I always assumed that if my marriage ever fell apart, and let's be honest, no one thinks it will, my kids would still be my anchor. I figured no matter what happened, between me and their mother, they'd at least understand. I did everything I could for this family, but finding out that Madison, my oldest daughter, the one I carried on my shoulders as a toddler and stayed up late helping with homework, as a teenager, knew about the affair and helped cover it up, that hit me like a freight train. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How do you even process something like that? Was she lying to my face all these months too? How long had she known? Did she sit at the dinner table with me, laughing at my jokes, while knowing her mother was sneaking around behind my back? It made me question everything. Every hug, every "I love you," every conversation we'd ever had. It all felt tainted. I didn't want to believe Rachel at first. I hoped she'd been mistaken, that maybe she'd misunderstood something. But when I replayed the look on Madison's face that night, how pale she went, how she didn't deny it. She couldn't even look me in the eye, and her silence told me everything I needed to know. The next morning I tried to distract myself, went for a long drive, with no destination, just circling the outskirts of town, with the windows down. It didn't help. Everywhere I looked, I was reminded of my family, of the life I thought I'd built, the gas station I'd taken Madison to, when she was learning to drive, the park where we used to have picnics, the ice cream shop the kids loved. When they were younger, it was like my entire town was mocking me. When I got back home, I sat down and tried to write Madison a text. Thought maybe I could calmly ask her why. Why she'd do this, why she'd betray me like that. But every time I started typing, my anger took over. I'd start with "How could you?" and then delete it. I'd try something softer like "Can we talk?" But that felt pointless. What was there to say? I knew I'd just end up yelling, and I didn't want that, so I didn't send anything. I spent most of that day replaying memories of Madison in my head. When she was little, she used to sit in my lap and tell me I was her hero. I was the one who took her to her first concert when she was 13. I remember how happy she was, holding my hand the entire time, because the crowd was so big, and she didn't want to get lost. She used to call me for advice about boys or college classes when she moved out. So how did we get here? How did I become the villain in her eyes? I keep thinking, maybe I wasn't enough of a dad to her. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I didn't spend enough time bonding with her. And that's why she sided with her mom so easily. I don't know. I'll probably never know. That evening, I finally broke down. I'll admit it. I'm not ashamed. I cried like I haven't cried since I lost my own father. It wasn't just about Catherine anymore. It was about my daughter. I've always been the type of guy who holds things together for everyone else, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. I was grieving the family I thought I had, the trust I thought we shared. It felt like I'd lost everything all at once. After that, I decided I needed to make a choice. I couldn't keep sitting in my house, feeling sorry for myself. I couldn't keep driving myself crazy, replaying what Madison did or why she did it. I love her. She's my daughter, but I realize that I can't fix this right now. She made her choice, and I can't let her guilt trip me into fixing a marriage that's already dead. I texted her the next morning. It wasn't long. Just, Madison, I love you, but I need space right now. I can't talk about this. Until I've had time to process, I hope you understand. She didn't respond. It hurt not to hear back, but in a weird way, it also gave me some peace. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking control of something. Madison wants to blame me for breaking up the family, but I refuse to carry that burden. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't drag her into this mess. Catherine did that. And if Madison wants to ignore that fact, that's on her, not me. I've also decided to focus on the kids, who do understand. Nathan hasn't talked to his mom since Rachel's birthday. He's angry, but I can tell he's also trying to hold himself together. I talked to him briefly about what happened, and he just said, "Mom screwed up. That's not on you." Hearing him say that made me realize I'm not alone. Rachel's been quiet since her outburst, but I pulled her aside the other day to check on her. I told her I was proud of her for standing up for what was right, even if it caused a scene. She teared up a little and said, "I just wanted the truth to come out." I hugged her, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe things would be okay. Lucas is still keeping his distance, but I know he'll come around eventually. He's always been the middle ground kid, and I don't blame him for not wanting to take sides. As for Catherine, I haven't spoken to her directly since Rachel's birthday. My lawyer handles everything now, and I plan to keep it that way. The less contact I have with her, the better. I don't know what the future looks like. With Madison, maybe one day she'll realize what she did, and we can rebuild our relationship. Or maybe we'll never recover from this. All I know is that I can't force her to see the truth, and I can't let her guilt manipulate me anymore. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time and trying to focus on the kids who are still here for me.